Hello everyone, welcome back to the Analyst for 9th November 2024, where we will be discussing 7 important articles from the Hindu and the Indian Express. In the first part of our analysis, we'll be discussing 2 articles, where in the very first article, we'll be trying to understand the recent Supreme Court judgment on the Aligarh Muslim University and its minority status. In the second article, we'll be looking into BRICS and how BRICS is still relevant in the global political arena. In the second part of our discussion, we'll be discussing 5 more articles from simplified perspective, where we will be looking into these articles with reference to the upcoming Prelims 2025 examination. So stay tuned. In yesterday's analyst session, we discussed about how the AMU or the Aligarh Muslim University is embroiled in a massive or a prolonged legal dispute. So if you have not watched it, please go back and do watch it, because we will be needing that discussion for today's discussion. Because we need to understand what was the background of the case which was going on which recently the Supreme Court has ruled and has passed its judgment, which is a very significant judgment because it concerns Article 30 of our Constitution, which gives the biggest amount of, say, fundamental right or say constitutional protection for minorities in the country, and how minorities and various linguistic groups can preserve their culture in the country. So this is why we have to look into this particular matter, and also in this particular article and editorial, which is very beautifully written by Dr. Faizan Mustafa, who is an eminent legal expert in this domain. So this is a very important article from our prelims perspective when we have to understand Indian polity and governance, and also from our GS2, where it contains or pertains to the Indian Constitution, its features, significant provisions, and the basic structure, where we have within the basic structure and also the feature of the Constitution, where we have the fundamental rights. And here, when we talk about the fundamental rights granted to minorities, right, Article 30 becomes very important because it gives them the, say, ample amount of rights to protect their cultural interests. Now here, when we talk about this case, firstly, let me talk about 2 important dimensions where we have to discuss the Aziz Basha judgment of 1967 and also the counteracting legislation proposed by the center just after the judgment in 1981. So what happened during that time? So in this particular case, the Basha case of 1967, what was pending at Supreme Court's disposal was the matter regarding Aligarh Muslim University's minority status. There were many people who told that Aligarh Muslim University was granted the legal status, right, according to a 1920 pre-independence or British legislation, under which AMU used to give degree certifications to its graduates, to its students under this particular matter. So there were many people, or there were many legal experts who were arguing before the Supreme Court that you cannot give a minority status to an institution who is having a legal statute, right? So this is actually what was before the Supreme Court, and that is why back then, it was also discussed yesterday. And let me tell you right now, back then, AMU was not a minority institution according to this Supreme Court judgment. So the Supreme Court ruled that it was not a minority judgment because it was not formally established by the Muslim community, but it was formally established by a central legislation or a British central legislation back then, right? It was not formally established. Now, the word establishment came into the picture, right? And if we go a little back into the history, we understand how the Muslim community was elemental in setting up of the Aligarh Muslim University. So we cannot blankly say that something is formal and informal according to various constitutional experts. So they say that something need not be formally established to be actually be established by a particular community, because there have to be particular intentions, right? There have to be particular efforts. There have to be a particular background for any institution to be set up by a minority, right? So this is what the matter was. That is why in 1981, to counteract this judgment, the central legislature, that is the Indian Parliament, amended the AMU Act to clarify that the university has indeed been established by the Muslims of India, right? But we have to understand that according to the Basha judgment, the AMU is not a minority institution till now, right? While the Supreme Court gave its verdict yesterday, we have to understand the Supreme Court also referred the same case whether AMU is a minority institution or not to a regular bench. This regular bench now is not set up yet, will be set up, and they will be now deciding whether AMU specifically will be getting the minority status or not, which was taken away by this 1967 case, right? As of now, what the Supreme Court is talking about is minority institutions as a whole, right? And that is why the establishment term is coming into picture. So in 2024, that is yesterday, the Supreme Court told that historical contributions and intent is very important. So these two things are very important when we talk about minority institutions being set up in the country. And also, when we'll have to talk about this establishment thing, we have to also note the efforts of the Muslim community in founding the institution, collecting the funds, and also seeking governmental approach, right? And then only in 1920, we understand that British, tried to give a proper legislative backing to AMU. So this is what we have to understand. The establishment is very important. And also, according to yesterday's case, the Supreme Court gave a test how to judge the status of a particular institution. So generally, the Supreme Court gave two tests. The first three are combined into one, and the fourth one is actually the second test. So the very first test is that what is an institution's origin? What is the purpose for which, for example, say in this case, the AMU was set up? Is there a minority role in its setting up, right? Or say, is it actually being set up by these minorities, right? So this is a very first step here. The second step is that, does its administration affirm minority character and serve minority interest or not? So this is actually the test where we have to follow, and this is very important for your mains, right? This is exactly what the Supreme Court told all about the same, right? And in this particular test, the Supreme Court actually is trying to pave the way for AMU to be recognized as minority institution. Please note, it has not yet said that AMU is a minority institution. I told that it has been referred to a regular Supreme Court bench to decide on the status of AMU as of now. Now here, let us look into the other aspects of the verdict here. The role of Article 30. Now, can anyone in the comment section give me a detailed description of what Article 30 is? Because yesterday we discussed this, right? Now, the role of Article 30 in defining minority character is actually something which the Supreme Court has emphasized. It emphasized that the Article 30 is open to broader interpretation, right? For example, in this case, the CGI, the Chief Justice of India, right, he told that for an institution to retain its minority character, it need not be exclusively administered by the minority group that established it. For example, say the Muslim community established the AMU, right? And we have to understand, according to Article 30, as interpreted by the Supreme Court here, right, who administers AMU right now does not matter for its minority status, right? The setting up, the establishment of the same is itself enough, right? Then the administration is as a consequence, not a precondition, right? So this is also something that we have to keep in mind when we talk about this case, right? Now, administration by a minority community is a natural consequence. For example, say if Aligarh Muslim University is being set up, it is quite obvious that it will be administered by the Muslim community, right? So it is a natural consequence of establishing this institution, but should not be treated as a strict precondition. That is, even if it is being administered by someone else, right, or some other authority, even for example the government maybe, then it is not the case that it would be losing its minority status, right? So this is exactly what the center argued, that the AMU is getting funds from the government of India. Then how can you tell that it is in a government or say a minority status, right? So this is what exactly the Supreme Court has clarified, that administration is a natural consequence. It is not a precondition in this matter. Then there is also, Supreme Court is also trying to clarify something which is also trying to protect the secularism of the country, which is Supreme Court told that flexibility in religious affiliation, right, is quite very important. Now here, Supreme Court downplayed or kind of, rejected the condition or say the viewpoint of religious symbols or places of worship in determining the institution's minority status. Now there are various other, evidence that can go into factoring an institution minority status, such as its history, such as its origin, such as the various documents, such as the various evidences, right, such as the various funds, such as various other, people who set up the institution. You cannot tell that merely you have say cross or say a Quran or say a mosque within in the institution and then tell that that is a minority institution. It is not that, right? There are various other aspects of determining say minority status, right? So religious affiliation is itself not enough, right? So that is what we have to understand, and examples in this case is, say for example, the mosque at Aligarh Muslim University or St. Stephen's College Church. So this is what we have to understand, that Supreme Court downplayed the significance of religious symbols or places of worship in determining the institution's minority status. Now, there were various people who were arguing that if AMU is receiving the central government funds, right, it becomes an institution of national importance. Obviously, AMU is an institution which is quite well regarded not only in India but also abroad, right? So it is obviously something, an institution of national importance. And at the same time, it is also having some minority status, right? Now, there's various sections of the population who is telling that these two cannot coexist together. But the Supreme Court told that it dismissed that the institution national importance negates its, this minority character. It is totally false, right? The Supreme Court clarified that both of them can coexist together because India is a diverse country. India is a unique country when we talk about the entire world, and we can, compare the religious freedom, the religious kind of institution that is granted in India, the autonomy that is granted in India is quite unique, and that is why the Supreme Court clarified if it is a national, institution of national importance, the same institute can also retain its minority status, right? Both of them can mutually coexistive, right? So that is what we have to understand in this matter, correct? Now, what are the implications of this judgment for the future? Now, this is actually the details that we have discussed as of now. What are the various aspects that the Supreme Court discussed on this particular matter? Now we have to understand what is the significance or implications of this judgment on the broader polity, Indian society, and so on. Now, firstly, when we talk about Article 30, now let us read this article. Article 30, subclause 1 grants all minorities, whether based on religion or language, the right to establish and administer educational institutions of their choice. Now, there has to be certain reasons for the same, right? Firstly, it is to preserve their own, culture, their own language rights, and various other things that particular minorities can, preserve over a period of time, right? It is also something to be kept for their future generations, correct? And also we have to understand that in the case of a brute majority force, the minorities can be assured that they are having a certain amount of fundamental right that is protecting their various cultural rights. So this is exactly what we have to understand, that for the preservation of all these aspects, they can establish and set up and administer, right, any educational institutions of their choice. This is a fundamental right, correct? So Supreme Court judgment is kind of affirming the same, right? This judgment is actually serving as a guiding indica for the minority character, right? Now you can use these words in your mains answers. These words will be enhancing the quality of your answers, right? This means that this Supreme Court judgment will be serving as a lighthouse for the various judicial cases and various legislations in the country. This precedent requires the court to consider the historical context of an institution, right? It is not only the religious symbols or say the various debates, arguments. We have to consider into origin, right? Even after we consider the origin, we have to look into what is the intent of any minority institution, right? Then minority institutions could surrender their administrative rights. Supreme Court also told that administrative right is actually not the precondition of this particular matter here. So administrative right can be with anyone, right? But the minority tag or minority status is something that is, will not be extinguishing, even if it is administrative or administrated by someone else in this particular case, right? It is also trying to promote pluralism in education, because we understand that the status of minorities in the country, when it comes to, say, the educational parameters, is quite lagging behind. And that is why, reservations up to 50% in the case of minority institutions, and also in the case of AMU, right, is something that the minorities of the country, essentially need to elevate their educational levels in the society. And also going forward, they want to become a part of the workforce, due to which we have to increase the, say, amount of, say, rights guaranteed to them. And that is what we have to understand. The Supreme Court judgment is also reaffirming the same. And lastly, we cannot forget Franklin D. Roosevelt's wise words that protection of minority rights is fundamental to a true democracy, right? So we cannot tell that something is a true democracy if it is not respecting the rights of the minorities. So please do use this kind of value additions in your mains, right? You can note these things down, and we can actually understand the significance of this case, right? Going forward, we will be again say discussing about the, say, future of this case, whether AMU is finally granted this minority status or not in this particular, say, Supreme Court cases going forward. But as of now, this case dealt with minority institutions as a whole, and that is why we have come to this question. The mains practice question. All of you are please encouraged to write this question, and also you can give me some of your perspectives on this particular Supreme Court matter in the comments below, right? So moving on to the next article right now. In the next article, we'll be talking about the BRICS journey so far. Now, the BRICS is actually a multilateral kind of an organization which is concerning the interest of the global South, right? In the comment section, can you let me know, say, some of the countries which we can generally include in the global South? Because in the past analyst sessions, we have been discussing a lot about the global South and how their interests will be integral to the world, or say to the future world going forward. Now, the main context is that there is a realization right now that the increased membership of the BRICS as of now has the potential to enhance the influence of this plurilateral grouping. This is very important for our prelims, where we have to discuss the current events of national and international importance, where we have the international organizations and summits, right? There are many prelims questions which will be also looking into the, say, the same at the end of this discussion, right? We also have the GS2 portions. We have to look into the bilateral, regional and global groupings and agreements that affect India's interest. Now, when we talk about BRICS, firstly, we will be having a very brief summary what BRICS is all about. The members of the BRICS, we know simply it is Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. Now, within these five say countries, South Africa was the last country to get involved in the BRICS, right? Apart from this, we have some new members in the BRICS. We have Argentina, we have Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia and the UAE. Now, the main initiative of BRIC, or say the main goal or main motive, is to have an harmony over the economic and the various social and the various, say, people to people connects within these particular countries. Because we have to understand, right, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, these are actually the countries which are developing nations as of now, since the status of Russia, right? So we have to understand that these countries are extremely important when we talk about the world going forward, right? It is also estimated that going forward, the BRICS nations will be dominating by 2050 in all spheres of international relations, economy, military, and so on. So that is why we must have a grouping of similar situated countries on a particular international platform. And here, there are many initiatives of BRICS. Firstly, it is about political and security cooperation between the members, right? Next, it is also about BRICS National Security Advisors meeting that they regularly convene. When we talk about the economic and financial cooperation, BRICS is having something which we know as a contingent reserve arrangement, right? It is actually a fund with pooled reserves of $100 billion to help countries to cope up with short-term currency positions. So in this matter, it is almost like the IMF, right, where it is about say securing funding to the countries which are in distress. For example, say in recent times we had Sri Lanka, which faced immense foreign exchange issues, right? So in this case, the IMF helped them, right? In this case, the BRICS could also have helped them in this particular matter, if at all the Sri Lankan government or the various other governments are willing to get support from such institutions. Next, it is also we have to understand that this particular CRA was a part of this Fortaleza, say summit of the BRICS. Next, when we talk about the new development bank, it is almost similar like the World Bank, right? Where we have all the BRICS members within the same. Apart from this, we also Bangladesh, UAE, Egypt and Uruguay, who are the new members. Now, when we talk about, say, the new development bank, right, it is also formally known as the BRICS Development Bank. This will be helping countries in actually getting loans at a favorable interest rates, right? Countries are open to all of the nations all across the world who are the members of the United Nations, right? So these countries, if they help or if they seek help in terms of, say, poverty eradication, public transport and various other developmental spheres, the new development bank will be giving loans at concessional rates of interest, right? So this is actually what are the major economic, say, wings of BRICS are, and they are very important. Why? Because as we have seen, they are kind of an exemplaries of the IMF and the World Bank. So cannot we see here that the BRICS is trying to have parallel arrangement just like the IMF and World Bank, or say the institutions which are under Western influence, right? So BRICS is trying to have their own system of giving multilateral aid, giving, say, economic aid to countries in need, and hence it is trying to increase the influence of its own members by giving an alternative pathway to World Bank, IMF, or say other Western, say, controlled institutions, or say influenced institutions. In addition to this, BRICS is also having something which we know as BRICS payment system, which is trying to facilitate payments between the various members of the country, hence also giving a similar platform on the payment matter, because on the other side we have the SWIFT messaging platform, which the banks all across the world, right, they use for instant messaging for all the international transactions to be verified. So also apart from this, right, to accommodate our own kind of payment system, we have the BRICS payment system too, right? So BRICS is actually offering the entire world some alternatives, some parallel some mechanisms where not only the Western countries, they have their own IMF, World Bank and also so on, right, where India is also part of, BRICS countries are also part of, but rather it is trying to give a kind of a different arrangement to all of the countries, right? Now here, apart from this, we also have the cultural and people to contacts, where there are regular parliamentary forums, film festivals, youth summit, academic forums set up under the BRICS. So we understand by now that BRICS is kind of a very important institutions when it concerns the, say, interests and aspirations of the global South countries. Now, when we talk about, say, BRICS and how it is surviving even now, right, and also there are various challenges all across the world, so that is what we have to discuss, that from its formation, right, when even South Africa was not a member, the BRICS showed immense intra-group cooperation and international influence, right, by the member countries. So by around the time they were established, it was having some international influence, but there were challenges in the second decade of setting up of BRICS, such as the COVID-19, India-China tensions and Russia-NATO tensions, right? So COVID-19 impacted the supply chains of the rest of the world, right? And also we have to understand that these are the developing nations, sans Russia, who were impacted due to the COVID-19 pandemic, right? And it imposed various challenges financially, and also when it came to India-China issue, particularly after the 2020, right, Debsang Valley and the various other crises at Leh, right, it also raised tensions within the grouping itself. Also, when Russia kind of invaded Ukraine, it also put into focus the conflict that Russia is also having with the Western nations, but prominently US and the Western European nations, right? So this particular thing is also there, and India had to navigate all of these issues together, right? India had to navigate issues with China, right, and still attend or say be a part of the BRICS. India had to be very diplomatic when it came to matters concerning Russia, right? So that is what we have to understand, that India has kind of played a very tightrope balance becoming a part of the BRICS. In the same case, or say in this particular same debate, in this particular same period of time, we also saw how BRICS had adapted, and also as of now it is kind of having a phase of rejuvenation or a revival aspect here. Why? Because there are many new countries which joined the BRIC. As we can see here in this particular map, there are countries like Argentina, Iran, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Ethiopia, who have joined the BRICS arrangement as of now, right? This is actually showcasing the BRICS potential as a representative of the global majority. As I told, that BRICS is actually proposing alternative mechanisms to the Western dominated mechanisms of the United Nations or IMF, World Bank, and so on. So that is why BRICS is proposing an alternative mechanism where even more and more newer nations are becoming a part of the BRICS. There has to be some reason for the same, right? So that is what the benefits of the BRICS are, so that these new countries are accruing or say becoming member of the same. And also, as we can understand why BRICS is very significant, right? And also why it is going through a phase of revival, and also it has good potential, is that, right, the global share of BRICS group, as we can understand, as a population aspect, is that India and China is itself dominating around 34-5% of the global population, right? That is 46% of the total population, including other members of the BRICS, right? It is having the share of world population. When you talk about the GDP, it is having 29% of, the global GDP. When we talk about the oil production, it is having 43% of oil production. So be it demography, be it say GDP, be it oil resources, BRICS is dominating everyone, right? Everything. So that is what we have to understand. It can be becoming a very significant aspect here, right? And also when we talk about the BRICS spirit and vision, right? What we have to understand is that while not aiming to establish a new global world order, BRICS is seeking to make the existing global system more inclusive and equitable, right? So there are various transitions right now. The US have recently, say, elected Trump in this particular case, right? On the other hand, China is also having its various aggressive economic policies, military policies, right? So that is what we have to understand, right? These two major countries as of now is kind of at loggerheads with each other, right? So soon we'll be seeing Trump imposing various import restrictions on Chinese items and so on, right? Maybe China will also be, kind of retaliating with the same. So there is, and also apart from this, we have, various conflicts all over the world, right? We also have various conflicts, say, particularly between the BRICS members too, particularly between Iran, right, and the rest of the Muslim community. Also, we have to understand that there are various vested interests between the BRICS itself. So there is chaos, simply, right? So this is what BRICS is trying to address over a period of time by not changing the, already world order that is going on, but by having good reforms in the existing world order, right? So it is not trying to make any country more or less in this particular power dynamics and so on. It's trying to make the world more inclusive and equitable, because it is having the core values of political and military security, economic and financial aspects, and also culture and people to people exchanges, right? And also we have seen globally as of now, BRICS is becoming a platform, right, where the emerging market developing countries, right, they are trying to become new members of the BRICS, and they are trying to have their own interest on this BRICS forum, right? Be it Saudi Arabia, be it Ethiopia, right, where it is actually one of the very first African nations, right, to become a part of the BRICS after South Africa, right? So it is also seen that BRICS is trying to have this kind of an identity where it is reflecting all of the continent's interests, right? Particularly the various emerging market economies as of now. Next, it is having a non-Western orientation, as we have discussed in the very first few say slides itself, that it is trying to have its own alternative and parallel arrangement of various international financing institutions, military institutions, and so on. then it is also having this agenda to reform the United Nations, because BRICS is almost, if you see, it is almost mirroring the functions of the United Nations. In itself, it is kind of mirroring because it wants various reforms in the United Nations, particularly in the United Nations Security Council. Now, can anyone in the comment section tell me what are the various issues with United Nations Security Council? Because we discussed this just in the previous analyst sessions, right? United Nations Security Council is a very powerful body, right? It's dominated by the P5 members. Also, can you let me know who are the P5 members right now? So to reduce their dominance, right? So reduce their dominance, the BRICS is also trying to present as an alternative phase. Please do not forget that we have China and Russia, who are actually one of the P5, two of the P5 members in the United Nations Security Council, right? So it is also something that we have to understand. We have some P5 members also that is present in the BRICS. So they can also directly influence reforms at the United Nations. Next, also the various stands that they have taken on various unilateral economic sanctions, such as US imposing various sanctions on Russia, right, particularly after the Ukraine invasion. So BRICS has also kind of openly condemned in few public instances of the various economic sanctions. So it is actually having a global voice in this matter. So what are Indian perspectives and strategic interest in this particular thing? Now, India values BRICS as one of its major plurilateral platforms or forums, right? India is actually a part of, BRICS SCO, right, in this particular direction, where it is with the non-Western alliances, where we have China, Russia in this particular place. So India definitely have to participate in this kind of forums. On the other hand, India is also part of I2, U2 alliances, right? India is a part of Quad, right? India is also various, part of various other, say, Western dominated, groupings, forums, where India is trying to balance best of the both worlds, right? So it is in broader interest of our own that we must be trying to promote a multipolar world, right? A multipolar world is a world where not, there is not a single country which is manipulating or pulling the strings all across the world in various aspects. We need to have India, we need to have US, we need to have China. We can also have various other countries who are pulling the shots or who are actually collaborating on the global scale to promote an equitable world order where power is not centralized but decentralized in various countries. And also, in recent times, as we have seen, right, in the recent BRICS summits also, in the various recent instances, we have seen how India and China are trying to improve their ties, right? Can you in the comment section tell me one instance, which is a very major instance recently, that India and China took a very good step or very big step in resolving their issues, right? So in another way, we can also understand that India can also serve as a bridge between the East and the West in this particular case, because as we have understand that India is part of both of the alliances, correct? And India's active role in this particular matter needs to go on with greater amount of diplomatic arrangement, with greater amount of international cooperation in this particular matter, and also having a collective voice, right, on major global issues, right? A group like BRICS can only be strong if it is kind of having its own stance, its own voice according to the various international conflicts which are going on, various issues which are going on, and also supporting good causes, both economic and social and military and so on. So based on this, we have a question for all of you, right? India is committed to shaping BRICS as an inclusive, cooperative, forum, adding value to global governance and fostering multipolarity. Explain. I want 2-3 points from all of you in the comment section below. And also I want your answers according to this 2016 prelims PYQ and 2015 prelims PYQ, right? All of these things we have just discussed. So you please let me know what are the answers of these two PYQs in the comment section below. With this, we'll be moving on to the next topic. The Union Minister of State for Fisheries have launched a very important and a crucial initiative to promote drones in the fishery sector of our country. It's a very important section in our prelims where we have to look into economic and social development, where we have the fishery sector within the same, and also in GS3 where we have to look into the economics of animal rearing, where we also have the fisheries sector and animal husbandry as a part of the same. Now, when we talk about using drones in various sections of life, we understand that recently there were many initiatives where we are promoting the use of drones in our agriculture. It promotes better amount of use of, or say, applying of fertilizers across the agricultural field. It helps reduce the labor of farmers, right? It also helps precision farming and using technology in the agricultural arena, that is in the cropping patterns across the entire country. But when we talk about using drones in the fisheries sector, it has many applications, it has many potential uses. According to studies, right, done in Kerala, right, according to studies, recent studies, we have found that, right, there is a positive response from the fishermen when we talk about using drones, or say adopting drone technology in the fisheries sector, right? Now there are some feasible characteristics because, right, the drones have optimized sensor for data collection. It is also kind of right now less costly to buy drones, and also drones serve a durable amount of time, right, where all of the same can be utilized in our, say, Indian fishery sector. We can use drones in aquaculture, where we can use drones to have proper amount of water quality monitoring, right, because the amount of, say, fish production depends directly on the water quality, right? Next, we can also assess the fish health in this particular water bodies and various say other areas where the fishery sector are involved in, right? We can also have feed management, where we can use drones to release the feed into the water bodies. Also, drones can help in precisely monitoring the amount of stock, or say how much of the fish production is in a particular session, and also this can help the farmers taking high resolution pictures using drones, and also creating a map of the fish stock in his or her ponds and other wetlands. When we talk about using drones in marine fisheries, where we are not dealing with ponds or small wetlands, we are now dealing with seas, right, high seas. So here, not only it can have all of these benefits, but also drones can limit illegal fishing, right? It can detect the same and it can report to the government authorities. It can also help in search and rescue operations, particularly during natural disasters, right, where drone can go say to an area up to 200 nautical miles, and actually can both help in illegal fishing and search and rescue operations of our Indian fisher people. Next, it can also help in post-harvest management, where it can directly help transport the fish from, say, the fish of fisher people's hut to the nearby markets, right? So it can help in say proper amount of management of the stock of fish, right? And also it can help in quality control, because if we have faster transportation, we will be having lesser chances of fish being wasted or being rotten. And finally, it can also have a monitoring aspect on the overall fisheries sector infrastructure, right? Be it boats, be it the various fishing nets, it can actually help in monitor the fishing infrastructure. So when we talk about the news right now, as we can see here, this is a recent meet that took place at Kerala, right? And the main theme of the same is promoting drones in the Indian fisheries sector, right? And this was actually held at ICAR, Central Marine Fisheries Research Institute, right, where the majority of the, say, scientists and the experts and also the union minister, they came to a conclusion that drones play a pivotal role in managing aquaculture firms, monitoring fish markets, assessing damage to, say, fisheries infrastructure, particularly during natural disasters, right? We all discussed this. It also can help us monitoring, say, fish behavior in natural habitats to detect signs of distress, erratic swimming pattern, and provide real data to the, or say real-time data to the various concerned authorities, right? And also when we talk about, say, the various other initiatives the government is taking, it is the center will be developing 100 climate-resilient coastal fishermen villages across the country, right? So this will be at a cost of 2 crore rupees per village, where the village will be kind of transform into climate resilient. Now what this means? This means that there will be funds which will be infused to make the village less prone to extreme weather events such as cyclone, floods, or say tsunamis at the coastal areas, right? Also, this is actually a part of the Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana. Now, Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana is aiming to have a blue revolution in the country, where it is trying to double the fisher people's income in the country. And also, it is trying to have the development of fish harbors, cold chain and processing plants by better amount of investments and funding aspect here. It is also trying to promote sustainable aquaculture practices and technology, right? Where we have to understand that here, the drone technology is actually a sub-scheme of the Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana. It is also trying to have fisheries education and extension services, where extension services essentially means that we must be setting a better amount of support system for our fisher folk, where we can have call centers, we can have various other data centers, scientific research institutes, R&D at these kind of places of coastal areas. It is also trying to provide social security benefits, insurance and credit facilities, right? Now here, we have to also understand that this will be helping, this entire initiative will be helping fish drying yards, processing centers, fish markets, right? And also promoting climate resilient practices such as seaweed cultivation, which is a major, kind of a crop that can help in carbon sequestration, that can bring in down the concentration of atmospheric carbon dioxide levels, right? Artificial reefs and green fields also will be promoted, right? Apart from this, the development, the Union Department of Fisheries, they will be installing transponders in approx 1 lakh marine fishing vessels at a cost of around 364 crores. What are the transponders? Transponders will be enhancing the communication between the various stakeholders in this particular system, right? It is a two-way communication system enabling real-time tracking of fish vessels. It will be using the Android mobile phones, and also it can be used up to 200 nautical miles from the coast. It can also be used to give various weather alerts, right? Weather alerts will be given or facilitated by using our own indigenously developed satellite by ISRO, that is a GSAT-6 satellite. So these are comprehensive measures for the fisheries sector. So we have to keep in mind when we talk about the various initiatives and steps taken to improve the fisheries sector in the country. In recent times, the NSCN-IM group, which is operational in Nagaland, they are threatening armed violence for the first time since signing 2015 framework agreement. Now we have to discuss this in context of our prelims, where we have to discuss about current events of national and international importance. Also, we have to look into GS3 aspect of the syllabus, where we have to look into the role of external state and non-state actors in creating challenges to internal security. Now in this particular thing, we have to discuss the background a little bit. Now the Naga National Council was formed in April 1946, right? Now this is just formed to address the social and political upliftment of the Naga people, right? And also, after the formation of Naga National Council, the return of Angami Zapu Fizo in 1947 kind of increased the calls for full independence for the Nagalim region. After this, according to Shillong Accord 1975, right, which is trying to bring in all the stakeholders of this particular issue here to abjure or reduce violence and work within the Indian Constitution, but this particular accord was opposed by Fizo, Isaksu and Muiva, right? So these three individuals, as we can understand, were instrumental in forming the NSCN, right? Though NSCN was actually seen by the government of India as a major threat to India's integrity and territorial sovereignty, because it was involved in various insurgency activism or activities from 1980s onwards. Now we have to also understand it split later into NSCN-IM by Isaac and Muiva and NSCN-K by Kaplang. So Kaplang is generally present or operative more in the Myanmar areas right now, right? Now the main demand for Greater Nagalim, as we have understand, they are arguing for Greater Nagalim, an extension of Nagaland's border by including Naga dominated areas in neighboring Assam, Manipur, Arunachal Pradesh to unite more than 1.2 million Nagas, right? So this is what we have to understand. They are also demanding separate flags and also a constitution for this particular case here, right? Then the government of India tried to get into negotiations in 1997. The Naga Peace Accord was signed, where NSCN-IM was involved in negotiations with the government of India and signed many ceasefire agreements. Before this, there were violence, and that is what was leading to lots of lives between the local people there. And also according to 2015 framework statement, which was very significant, because on 3rd August 2015 the center signed a framework with the NSCN-IM to resolve the Naga issue, and also this tried to give them various cultural, societal and various other economic recognition to the Naga community. So but we have to understand that, right, the agreement was only a framework, while many details were left out in the open to be negotiated from 2015 till now, right. This kind of arrangement was kind of unique because it recognized the unique history, culture and position of the Nagas, right. And also we have to understand that talks on this particular agreement were kind of held regularly to have the finer details of the agreement. But in 2022 the talks broke down after the NSCN accused the interlocutor, right, appointed by the center, of excluding 3 political points, right. Because in 2015 when the pact was the pact was just signed, right, it was actually to silence India's longest running insurgency, right. And also we have to understand this pact was envisaged to open up various investment opportunities, right, and development opportunities in the northeast regions. It also sought to isolate NSCN-K Khaplang, which is kind of active in Myanmar. Apart from this, it will be also kind of envisaged that it would have been decreasing the extortion, kidnapping, gun raining or drug trafficking in the northeast state, right. It can also improve Myanmar ties with India, and can also boost India's Act East policy. But everything came to a kind of a standstill in June 2022 when talks broke down. And this is what exactly we have to understand with the perspective of this news, right. For the very first time since signing an agreement, now the NSCN is telling that we will be returning to violence, because according to them, if the center does not agree to third-party intervention to address its demands, right. For example, the various political demands they are having, right. The demands of the same are not out in the public yet, right. These are not out in the public because they are discussing with the government in private, right. But the main demand that the government of India is never going to agree to is actually having a separate flag and a separate constitution for the Nagas, right. This is exactly what they are having problem with, right. And this statement was drafted in the name of Mr. Muiva by his 2 China based aides. So also we understand the China angle in the same, right. And also we have to understand that the government of India will be attempting to impose conditions and in terms of surrender on the NSCN, right. So this particular statement is talking about this. So they are kind of trying to reignite the issue again, quoting that the interlocutor R.N. Ravi in 2022, he did not properly communicate the various messages, the various intentions to the central government, right. And this is what we have to understand. So the way forward is that there must be greater amount of negotiations again from us new beginning. We must be also trying to have better amounts of relations with Myanmar to counteract the Khaplang group, which is influencing the same with China, right. So these are the things that we need to go forward, and also we have to understand, we have to take proper actions, because this can spread off to the rest of the northeast states too. So this is what we have to keep in mind. Now let us move on to the next article. In the next one, we'll be looking into recent statements by Ashwini Vaishnav, the Minister of Railways. And here he is actually talking about, and also the various debates on the Debroy committee recommendations on the railways, right. Now this is very important for prelims, where it pertains to economic and social development, and also when we talk about GS3 infrastructure, where it concerns the Indian railway topic. Now here when we talk about the Debroy committee, there are many recommendations that this committee gave. Now this 2015 expert committee on railway reforms was actually headed by late economist Bibek Debroy, who was a staggering academician in India, right. And this particular committee, this recommended many aspects, many important aspects, such as the phasing of the railway budget, the redesigning of the chairman of the railway board as CEO, and a plan to add more power to to general managers of the railway and the divisional general managers, right, so that they can take independent decisions, right, and also promoting a very important reform such as promoting liberalization of the Indian railway, such as not exactly privatization but kind of tending to the same, right. So let us look into some of the important recommendations that was given and undertaken by the government of India too, right. So if we look at right now the Vande Bharat trains and Kavach, so they all came from the recommendation of this committee, because this committee talked about improving technological investments in the Indian railways. So apart from this, we also have the Gati Shakti Vishwavidyalaya, which is set up to actually bring in greater amount of harmony into how we can use the Indian railways and boost the other infrastructural sector of our country. At the top of the recommendation was the liberalization of the Indian railways. This was not accepted by the government of India because it was actually thought of, say, introducing some new operators in the railways, right? But as of now, the government of India does not have any plans to add any new operators which belong from the private sector. While it does not mean privatization as a whole, because after this, the control of the same of the railways will be with the government of India. But the government of India is not at all interested in also, say, involving new operators, right? Now here, this committee also said that a regulatory mechanism to promote a healthy competition must be set up, right? And also we have to understand that in the view of opposition from railway unions and political parties, the government did not accept this, correct? And also when we talk about, say, bringing in administrative changes in the Indian railways, right, the Debroy panel recommended that the chairman of the railway board be redesigned as CEO to speed up or hasten up the process of decision making, to actually reduce the red tapeism in Indian railways. That the railway CEO must be acting or must not be among the first among the equals, and should therefore have the powers of actually first and final decision making, and also veto powers, right, in the case of dividend view, correct? And also we have to understand that according to the same, right, the various other activities which are non-remunerative for the railways, correct, such as say providing security to the customers through railway protection force, medical and education facilities to its employees, this can be cut down, right? So this offload of, say, the non-necessary conditions of the Indian railway, or say the funds, this is actually under the consideration of the government as of now, correct? And also this panel recommended the overhaul of Indian Railways accounting system, so it can actually be in say close sync with the global best practices of railways all across the world. But apart from this, we have had various other committees too. We have the Rakesh Mohan Committee of 2010 first, then we have Sam Pitroda Advisory Committee, Kakodkar Committee, Anil Kakodkar Committee again in 2012, and also Dinesh Dwivedi Committee. So firstly, we have the Rakesh Mohan Committee, which taught about or recommended about establishing railway regulation authority to look into operational and management aspect of the railways. It also incorporated or suggested the setting up of Indian Railway Corporation to look into the various, say, management aspects of the Indian railways too. It also recommended that Indian railways to be following the generally accepted accounting principles which are followed across the world, which was also recommended by the Bibek Debroy Committee. Construction of 15 to 20 logistical parks were also envisaged. Then creation of National Board for Railway Safety and Railway Research and Development Council was also recommended, and 6 dedicated freight corridors were also being recommended. Now in the comment section, can you let me know, right, how many dedicated freight corridors are set up in India according to this Rakesh Mohan Committee as of now, because this was also discussed in the Analyst recently, right? So these are all the committee's recommendations that we can use in your mains answers to add value. Apart from this, we also have the Sam Pitroda Advisory Committee, where it is recommending to implement advanced technologies and high-speed rail networks. Now the first Kakodkar Committee is recommending on the safety focus of the Indian railways, right? It is via various tracking improvements, having a proper amount of safety regulation authority. In 2012 committee again later, signaling and train protection system was envisaged, improving track infrastructure and implementing the train coalition avoidance technologies. Finally, in the Dinesh Trivedi committee, we also have seen the recommendation of fare increase because the railways is always already in a lack of funds, due to which we can increase the fare a little bit. Then we can also have rationalization of the freight charges, right? Because we need to have better amount of private sector participation in the Indian Railways, where the private sectors can transport their goods easily. So we can have say reduction in the fares of the freight charges over a period of time. Now recently the US Fed, the US Central Bank, has cut their interest rates in the US. Now this is a very significant thing. Let us look into this and what are the implications for India. Now it is very important for prelims, economy and social development to look into the various aspects of how international economic events can influence India's own domestic market, right? So let us look into this. Now firstly, we have to look into the background of the US economy. See, US economy was fighting high levels of inflation, right? Now we know that if we have high levels of inflation, it typically means that the money supply is very high in the economy. And if we have to reduce the money supply, we have to increase the interest rate, right? Now why inflation was high? Due to many reasons, due to global conflicts going abroad, and also due to mainly the COVID-19 pandemic and the subsequent lockdowns and the unlockdowns over a period of time. So due to which we have had high inflations in the US, due to which it typically means higher money supply, so due to which the Fed actually increased the interest rates. But we have to understand, right, that if we have higher amount of interest rates, it increases the cost of borrowing, right? And if it increases the cost of borrowing, businesses will not be taking any new loans. If new loans are not being taken, new investments will not be done. If new investments are not being done, economy will not be growing and GDP can be impacted. So this is exactly how we can understand high interest rates can be detrimental to one's economy. So that is why, as we have seen, the Fed has cut the interest rate by 25 basis point or 1/4 of a percentage point, right? And this is actually a signal that inflation is coming under control in the US. Now we understand when inflation is high, increase the interest rate, and if the Fed is cutting the interest rate, that means inflation is right now coming into control over a period of time. And now, what are the implications of this rate cut? We have to understand that the borrowing cost and Indian implications that we have to discuss in detail. Firstly, when we talk about the borrowing cost, right? Now we understand the Fed interest rates, or say the other central bank interest rates in the domestic country. As of now, we have to understand they influence employment and inflation. As we have seen, just discussed right now, if interest rates rise, investments will be coming down, right? So that is exactly what we have to understand. If investments come down, economy will be hit. This means that if investments come down, employment opportunities will be coming down, because if new businesses are not taking loans to expand new branches, to set up new branches and so on, they will not be hiring new workers. So investments come down, employment also come down. That is, unemployment goes up, right? So this is actually Fed's policy of monetary, of using this monetary policy of using interest rates to improve GDP, to improve employment, and also to reduce inflation. So one weapon to actually target everything, correct? So this is what we have to understand. When interest rates go down, it becomes cheaper to borrow. Households are more inclined to buy more goods and services, so they put more demand on goods and services. Business take more loans, right? So this improved demand can actually push up wages, because to have more demand, this means you have to increase production of goods and services. To improve production, you either need to give more salaries, or you need to take more and more employment, right? So employment will be improving, right? So while monetary policy does not directly link, immediately link to inflation and employment, monetary policy is a key factor in curbing runaway prices or inflation, or stoking the growth impetus, right? And also, as we have seen in recent times, US in 2024 is decreasing the interest rates, right? Now let us look into what we can actually talk about the implications on India. Before this, we have to look into that. Analysts have been predicting, right, that the borrowing costs in the US will be falling further in the months ahead, or say the interest rates will be falling further in the months ahead, because Donald Trump will be implementing some of the tax cuts. Tax cuts means you are reducing the tax or say income tax rates. If income taxes are reduced, people will be having more money to spend, and maybe more money to spend will be rising inflation again, right? And also apart from this, Donald Trump is also trying to have higher amount of government expenditure on curbing or reducing immigration, right? So this will be putting more and more government financing into the economy, which will be further increasing money supply and can even increase inflation further. So this is actually some of the future stakes or future risks going forward, right? Now, when we understand where we concern India, right? So we have to understand the threefold impact of this particular Fed cut. Now, when we talk about, say, this interest rate being cut by the US, so let us take example when interest rate was not cut, maybe interest rate was same in both of the countries at 5%. Now when interest rate is cut to 4% in the US, now it became more cheaper to borrow in the US, right? So it became more cheaper to borrow dollars maybe in the US. So I will be borrowing $100 in the US and I will be, say, depositing this $100 into Indian, say, maybe fixed deposit or various other instruments, because India is giving higher interest rate than the US. So what people will be doing? People, or say investors, they will be pulling out their money from the US and they will be investing into India, right? So this is what we also talk about, say, in economic terms as currency trade, right? So this is currency carry trade, that India will be more attractive or more attractive destination for currency carry trade. People will be doing the same here. It is also positive news for global growth, because we can understand this particular activity or say in decrease in the federal interest rate. This will be actually trying to increase, say, US economy, because more people in the US will be borrowing money here, right? And they will be investing in the US, say, setting up new businesses and so on, right? And this will be increasing US, GDP over a period of time. And if it's the same, it can also create more and more demand from the US, from India, right? So this can also lead to global growth. Not only India, it can be various other countries too. So it is actually seen as a good thing, correct? Next, there will be a churn in the emerging market equities, because we have just seen that people will be taking money as loans in the US and they will be investing in India. So this will be bringing in a lot of foreign portfolio investments in countries like India. So they will be investing in equities, government bonds and so on, correct? So that is what we have to understand, that this particular event is extremely important. But given Trump's victory, right, and the threats of tariffs, tax cuts and, say, inflation going forward, this particular thing can be impacted, correct? And also we have to understand that China recently signed off an economic stimulus package, because China is slowing down, right? So the government of China, right, is trying to infuse a lot of money in Chinese industries and various, say, consumers, right? So they can spend more, right? So it is increasing the money supply, so it can spend more, increase the demand. And that is why, over a period of time, maybe foreign portfolio investments can also come to China in this particular aspect rather than India. So India must also be aware of this particular thing and must be taking steps so that more of investments due to this action come to India in this particular matter. Finally, in the last article, we have to understand that Center recently announced a successful try and learn of a new pension scheme, which is very important for prelims economic and social development, where the scheme is centralized pension payment scheme. When we talk about pensions and pensioners, if you can look at this particular cartoon here, the particular pensioner is very much, confused and tired and angry, frustrated that the particular person has missed the deadline, right? There have been many reminders from the EPFO, right, to file pensions, to maybe, say, particularly, say, change some details, having some mismatches and so on. So it is very confusing. So that is why recently the government of India has come up with a national level centralized system where pension disbursement or of the the funds of pension to be given to a particular pensioner, right, that can be possible using any bank, any branch across India without the need for transfer of pension payment orders and so on. Everything can be done digitally, right? This can transform the EPFO into more robust, responsive and tech-enabled organization In fact, this particular initiative is actually a part of EPFO's CITES 2.0 initiative. Please do remember these terms for your prelims, because UPSC can ask what this term is all about. So this particular CPPS is actually a part of the CITES 2.0, where each zonal or regional office maintains separate agreements of pensions, right, with only 3-4 banks. So this particular thing will be reducing the compliance burden and also will be improving the efficiency over a period of time, right? And also this is coming to a relief to the pensioners who move to their hometown after their retirement. Now they can totally do everything on a digital platform, and this is exactly what the pensioners are actually looking into from 1st January 2025, where they can get pension from any branch, any bank, from any part of the country, right? So this is actually what we have to understand, that pensions more than 11 crore was digitally disbursed to 49,000 EPS of Jammu, Srinagar, Karnal recently. So this was actually tested as a pilot study, right? A pilot study, a demo study, where this particular initiative is successful and will be addressing long-standing challenges and be also including technology in EPFO and its functions. So this was all for today. I thank you all for being a very patient audience. Please do attempt the quiz which is following up. Till then, we'll meet again. Thank you and best of luck.